Hello, my name is Michael and I'm a DQIT student, and today I'm going to show you how to do this web animation that I did for our project recently. So it's a simple enough animation. It's a photo album that basically when you move the mouse cursor over the images, they just kind of rotate and zoom in. Okay, to explain how to do this, I'm just going to do a kind of step-by-step tutorial. I won't actually write out the code, but I'll just kind of cut into when I have all the code written out to save a bit of time. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is just obviously start a new project, and I want you to link a style sheet saying main CSS. It doesn't have to be just anything you want. Call it main CSS, whatever you want. And yeah, so basically now we'll go into step one. Alright, so for step one, I basically want you to have a div class. I want you to name the div class photo album. This will be kind of like overall the whole entire I don't know, explain a photo album is probably the best way to describe it. But basically where all the animation takes place. And first thing we need to do is just make a header. You can write anything you want. I'm just writing Dundalk because it's for a project. And inside the header I want you to put a span. Now I'll explain this later on. It'll probably make a bit more sense once I move on to the CSS. But for now I'm just going to write down the code we need, and then I'm going to move on to the CSS afterwards. Okay, after we've made our header and our span, the next thing is to actually just put in our images. Now at the moment I'm getting errors. That's because I normally keep my images in an images folder. But for now I haven't actually made an images folder, so don't mind, you can actually just link an image if you want, but these are just the images I was using. So just change the URL if you actually want to put in other images from the internet and whatnot. Okay, so basically you also need to class your images. So a Polaroid is basically, it'll probably make a bit more sense, but it's kind of like the block of the image. It'll probably make a bit more sense once we move on to the CSS to actually describe what that means. I'll probably wait until then to really go into that. Small is just basically what I'm going to define the image. Again, it's going to make more sense once we move on to the CSS. These are basically things I'm using to describe the images by, and it'll make a lot more sense when we move on to the CSS. The image is just literally what I'm using to the name for each image basically. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our main CSS, and basically that's all the code we need for the index.html or whatever .html you've named it. And now I'm going to move into how we start our CSS file. Okay, so basically I have taken our span and our h1, our header, and I've put them into the CSS, and I've given them a few values. So basically what I've done here is I've used the span to it's to kind of more decorate the text with inside. So our Dundalk Institute of Technology, this is actually basically what font we're using, the style, so italic or bold, the background color for the actual text almost, and then a bit of padding, align the text as center, a bit of box shadow. So this is basically used for decoration, and the H1 is used for, it's basically kind of more for the position of the actual header. So the header was, if you can remember, the header was kind of like in the middle, and the images were kind of sprawling out from the side. So basically this is to kind of put the text in the middle almost. Okay, so the next thing is photo album. Now photo album is it's very simple, it's only one line. Basically we're putting this to relative, so position relative. What that basically does is you can move about the photo album and it doesn't really affect the position of any other elements. It doesn't really mess with any other elements. If you do absolute, it kind of when you scroll in and out, it'll actually move in different places. There's lots of videos explaining this, but it's kind of hard to explain. But basically you need this so that images don't kind of affect each other when you're actually doing all the animations, because it can get a bit weird sometimes. Yeah, so after this I'm going to move on to Polaroids. Okay, so this is a Polaroid. So if you remember, hold on, I'll go back into it. So, oh god, that's the wrong one. If you remember here, we had a Polaroid, So basically this is defining it in CSS. So I'm displaying it as a block. So this is kind of just kind of a how would you explain it, like kind of decorating it. So I want to kind of make it a block because I want it to look like a Polaroid. I want it to kind of be like a white block around each image. So basically this is all just kind of decoration, box shadow. The only really kind of important things are absolute, and that's mainly to stop the images messing with each other, and the transition. So basically this this is basically when the images actually move, it defines how fast they move. So any transition from zooming in to rotation to anything like that, it basically just defines how fast it will actually happen, or how slow it will actually happen. Okay, so this is the most important part. Pretty much this is basically the animation itself. So basically what this is when you hover over the Polaroid, which is the kind of block attached to the images, it'll do what is described here. So basically what it is, you rotate to 0 degrees. So rotating to 0 degrees, basically what it does is it'll actually just put the image back straight. So if the image was tilted slightly, it would actually rotate it back into its normal position. And scale, so scale is pretty much self-explanatory. It just kind of zooms in the image by 1.3. You can set it different values. I like 1.3. You can set it to 1.1 if you want. Basically it just kind of makes the image a bit larger. And the Z index as well. Z index is important. It'll probably make more sense once we move on to the images, but Z index, basically why this is here and why it's set to such high value is that when you hover over the image, I want the image to come up into the front of everything. So even our header, our H1, it'll come in front of the H1, it'll come in front of everything once you hover over the image, or the Polaroid, sorry, not the image, and it'll display the image, and it'll rotate it straight, and it'll zoom it in 1.3. Or it'll kind of make it bigger to 1.3 scale. Okay, so now basically we're just moving on to the images. Now this is the part that you can kind of do yourself. You can kind of change it the way you want it. But basically what this is it defines each image. So it's basically what it is, we're styling each image. So again, the Z index is basically what images you want in front of other images. So if you see here, I have image 1, and it's set to -1, and I have image 3 set to -2. So basically the image 1 would actually display in front of image 2. If they were in the same position, image 1 will display in front of image 2. So this is basically just to give kind of make all the images overlap each other, just to give it a bit of a more, I don't know, a more kind of scattered look if you want. But you can change it whatever way you want. This is the top and right are basically just to do with what position it's in. I was using pixels, but I decided to move to EM because I think pixels, if the resolution is different on a different screen, it can actually mess with it, I'm pretty sure. The rotate is basically the rotation of, so basically it tilts each image to a certain degree, which you can define there. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And now we just go on to the smaller part, and I think that's pretty much it. Yeah. Okay, so this is the last part. Now, if you remember from our index.html, we had some images defined as small, medium, large, and extra large. So basically what this does is it just kind of has it's a little separate thing where I can kind of define what images I want to be big images, what images I want to be large images. Instead of putting it in each one, I kind of have a little container, if you will, that will kind of do that for me. So if I just want, instead of setting one of the images to height 150 and width 250, I can just set it as a large image. So I can have 3 large images and they'll all be the exact same. So basically that's just kind of like a little decoration thing. You don't have to do that. You can set each one you want, but for me, I just found this more useful. Again, I'll just show you. Oh, sorry, I keep going on the wrong one. So basically, this is where I'm defining each image. So you can see some some images are small and some are medium and some are large, and then I just did one extra large just to kind of show you the difference. So this saves me from having to define the size on each image. It's just kind of I don't know, cleaner, and almost I just kind of like to keep it separate. And yeah, so that's pretty much everything. What I'm gonna do is I have a little description kind of notepad I have at the moment that kind of goes through each step, and I'm gonna paste that into the description. So because I know sometimes when you're explaining it, you kind of rush it, or I'm not the best at explaining things. So that basically is kind of written out form of everything I did, and yeah, so that's pretty much it.